following the sounds of the bells, where the sound goes, just maybe into quiet. So bringing your attention into the present moment, into your body in this chair. You have some on your lap or whatever. You might want to put it to the side. Right away. Of being comfortable in the chair. Maybe just beginning to check in to the body, mind, situation. So maybe you have some traveling energy left. Maybe you have some waking up energy left. You can check into that. We'll see if we can bring ourselves into the present moment. Just through the senses. So it's not possible to feel our bodies or to hear a sound anytime but now. We can't feel touch, we can't hear in the past, in the future. When we're with our experience in the present, we are in the present. So you might bring your attention into your feet right now. So just feeling your feet where you've placed them. So they may be on the ground, they may be somewhere else. You could feel the soles of your feet against the insoles of your shoes. So the idea is to rest your attention. Not hold your attention, not keep your attention, but rest your attention. So a little bit of effort, not a whole lot. And the mind, the attention may wander off. And that's how we're built as humans, really, to do that. And so when you notice it, you can choose to come back. So this simple process of resting our attention on an anchor, noticing when we go away, and coming back is the process of meditation. So perhaps you would like to move your attention now from your feet up to your belly. So feeling perhaps the movement of your breathing in your belly. Maybe there are other sensations in the belly region. Just resting the attention there. A different anchor. The attention wanders off, just bringing it back. And so as we're going through these anchors that I'm offering you, if one really strikes you as something you want to stay with, just stay with it. You don't have to follow. If you'd like, you could move your attention to your chest, the sensations of breathing that appear in the chest. Resting the attention on those sensations. If you find you're telling a story or making a list or a judgment or a complaint, just noticing that's happening and coming back to your attention on the breath in your chest. So now I'd invite you, if you like, to bring your attention to the breath at the nose, the nostrils, on the upper lip, whatever sensations are there for you. Another anchor, another resting point. Another place to return to. If you're off somewhere, perhaps you can come back to the nose or whatever anchor you've chosen. And so here's another one, another possible anchor. Bringing your attention into your hands. That sense of touch, or maybe the sense of the pulse. Maybe coolness or warmth in the hands. Gently, gently resting the attention. It will go away, and you will notice, and then you can choose to come back. Aware of where the attention is. You come back to the anchor that you've chosen. And I'll offer one more, which is the sense of hearing. Just attending to whatever sounds arrive at your ear. So not listening so much as just paying attention to this realm of perception. It's the body, it's our senses that bring us to the present moment, which is our native land in some sense. And is definitely the only time in which we are alive. Past and future, not so much. Our potential is in the present moment. going away and coming back from whatever anchor makes most sense to you right now. And so maybe you could take a deeper breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Think about opening your eyes if they're closed. Maybe look around, see who's here. So maybe we can make room for Dr. Giorgino. Come on up. So I'm going to ask that we introduce ourselves in this way so that we're all equal. You can say your name or whatever part of it you think that I might be able to remember. And if you know me, that's not much. So you could say your name, and you could say how it is with you in the moment. Oh, you're on.
My name is Enzo, and when I feel cold, I become really emotional. I cry. I feel okay.
Okay.
I'm Janice, and I'm feeling much more relaxed. Driven from Cheltenham today.
Thank you for that drop.
I'm Deb, and I'm good.
Mary and Robert. Janine and Light. Lauren and Sauce. Meredith. Buzz.
Dave, Marie,
I'm Kathy, and I am more present walking.
I'm Sandy. Peaceful. I'm Jenny and I'm Pizza. I'm Christina and my favorite coffee. I'm Sarah. Say, I'm peaceful now. Getting here was much better. I'm Jen and I feel grateful. And Ashley and I'm pleasant.
I'm Josh, I'm president.
And I'm Don, and I am here just to do that thing here. Okay. So we're here to talk about life skills and community, and how life skills might help us to not only develop and support community, but to actually be able to work as be able to solve problems, those kinds of things. And so this idea of life skills is something that Dr. Giorgino, who by the way is here for us from the University of Turin, and so he was our visiting scholar for the week. This is the last of many events. So he and I have worked together on this idea of life skills. We published an article, which actually should show up if I tap the machine here. And looking at contemplation, looking at mindfulness through this lens of life skills changes it, I think, in some ways from what we might normally think of when we think of meditation. because it makes it maybe more urgent. And also points out more of its utility. We tend to think, mindfulness, meditation, this will help me achieve my peace, right? And that's all well and good. And it's a first step. So there are social levels to mindfulness. Dr. Giorgino is a sociologist, and actually an economic sociologist. So the idea of transactions, the idea of provisioning ourselves, giving ourselves, finding for ourselves the things that we need. And mindfulness is kind of an interesting interconnection that he's pursuing. So what we're going to do is walk through the article that we wrote together, give you some background that way, and then we're going to do some experiential things to bring this sort of into reality and maybe into the reality of this little community that we have. So I will now go tap the machine which fell asleep. Hello. Wake up. There we go. So there we have a poem by Antonio Machado. And so we wrote this article as an epistolary article exchange. So we just, since we're far apart, different continents, we just wrote back and forth to each other to share our thoughts rather than try to, sit on Zoom and work out a draft. And so it's really actually a social undertaking to write together, but this format kind of exposes that a little more than, exposes our process. So the poem reads, would you like to read it or? In English? In English, yeah. You can read it in both if you'd like. Okay.
Dr. Hunt, is it possible to enlarge it? I was going to say the same thing.
Yes.
Let me
It's a little hard
see.
back here.
One word about
Oh,
that.
yes, there you go.
Beautiful.
Oh, look at me.
You're good, thank you.
The Journal of Peer Production is the main journal of the Foundation Peer Production, which is the main website of the Commons as an international association of those who promote commoning, promote a commons-based economy. So just to give you some background about the journal. It's available for free. It's just the Journal of Peer Production, and if you find something in your field that you're interested, how to transform or in a commons, or how many experiences are worldwide in your field, in healthcare or social justice, etc. Just, I think it's a good source of, especially the section Commons in Transition. It's a lot of all over the world experiences that with videos also, not only articles, videos, interviews, etc. It's really a rich source of for imagine a new society and imagine right now and practice. So this was the reason why we thought about publish there and not elsewhere.
So you might want to do a definition of a commons, since it's not as common to be talking about that in the US of A as it is in Europe. So just a quick definition of it.
Now, right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right now.
Okay. So we know, I need with the four, mainly the four most important forms of the most important forms of economy. State, you know, what does it mean? Public parts, public administration, etc. Market, and you know as well, it's business. And a household economy, much more important than expected even now. I already said so in the first meeting. And the fourth, the commons. The commons-based economy is an economy in which we share some resources and manage them together, which means that these resources are not necessarily under our control in terms of ownership. For example, we can have from a charity, from a church, the possibility to manage a forest or a building, or from the state, or from a private company, an abandoned building managed by the community. The ownership is of the private company, the state, the church, or the charity involved. But the management is by the community. And we have also the possibility that we are the owner in community, a sort of community ownership. This concept goes across the centuries, in Middle Age, and even in the Roman law. Is called civic uses. But with the term civic uses, you understand the use of something that is not yours as individual or group. And in Italy, there is now a group of jurists. They are trying to modify the constitution, introducing the commons as a sort of ownership, different from market, from the state, and from civic uses. It's the ownership of the community, that specific community. We have a lot of examples. For example, the lobsters in Maine experience in maybe centuries, I don't know, I'm reading a research made by Anderson on this small community in Maine. They use the ocean is not of them, obviously, the ocean, but they control. And if I understood, the families have a lot of the sea, and each family has a lot, and they control this part of the ocean, and they make their living from there. So it doesn't mean that the commons exclude an economy, because that does not exclude profit, but it's a profit shared in some way, or you share the profit of the community in a sort of solidarity economy, or each family can have its own part. It depends. There are many experiences, so the commons is just one form. It's one general form with many possibilities of interchange and definition. So I think this is what we're going to put. So you have experience as well here. Usually are related to natural resources, aqueducts, so or forestry, or the fishing, for fishing. And Elinor Ostrom won a Nobel Prize in 2008 for her work on the commons. Elinor Ostrom, O-S-T-R-O-M. You can read some of that. She studied the police in Chicago in the 70s, first study of, you may say the police is not that kind of commons, but security is a commons. Or it's a private commodity. You pay for having your building secured. Or police could be intended as a form of protection of the community as well. Other studies are related to aqueducts in the Los Angeles system of water provisioning. And just pick up one of the studies to understand what this means. This is more form of co-production, which means I co-produce a good or a service with the state, mainly in this case, because water are intended as a public public good, and you, as a citizen, participate to the management of these resources. This could be applied in health, in social services, and everywhere. For another, new examples come from Rima Flow, I don't remember exactly. It's an Italian company who had its own bankruptcy some years ago, and the workers occupied the factory and continued the production in a community form. This was sort of illicit form, because the ownership was of those who bankrupt, but they didn't have any power to impose their after bankruptcy. The state closed an eye, and I mean it's a sort of it happens. It happens, and it happened in Argentina, in other parts of the world. The occupation of a private factory by workers after a crisis, and instead of closing it, continue the production in a community form. So we have lots. If we go into the digital world, this is much more easy to understand. Think about Linux. Linux is like its opposite. It's Apple Macintosh software system, operating system, and Linux is free. It's completely free. It's open source, not only free for use. You can modify the source of the code. Linux is a commons. An application to the internet could be Wikipedia, which is a commons as well. 50,000 people collaborating for free with the same quality of the Encyclopedia Britannica, for example. So, and we have multiple. This, in the digital world, is one in which people like to share software. So put their individual intelligence and skills in commons for free. You may say, how can they make their living? And this is a great problem. They make their living because they are employee of some universities or the state or companies, private companies. And they steal some time, working time there inside or in their weekends or their nights, depends. So because this represents only 1% of the planet or the Earth economy, but it's growing for different reasons. Not because we are more generous than in the past, but because we have the technology to share without a limited number of participants or of assets. So just the intended community is a community of people that know each other face to face is a vision that's a bit limiting. We should think sort of commonhood, sort of a community in which we include the digital, the possibility to share with somebody else that we will never know face to face. Maybe it's a voice, is a digital identity, maybe it's not his registered official identity, is Tim, is not his name is true name, or is Cinderella, which doesn't mean an acronym or a pseudonymic identity, but it does mean that we can't trust, because trust is in the machine in some way. This could be accepted or not, but the idea is that of smart contracts. So the idea is that we now are in a new phase of the internet, no more information and communication, but transaction about assets and values of any kind, even symbolic, personal level dimensions. And this is why life skills are so intriguing. At the same time, this world so intriguing and a little bit mysterious or scary. At the same time, we have this on one side and the possibility of extinction ourselves as humanhood, because we have this possibility. It's clear. And this, the urgency, we're talking, this is the urgency. And this is no more a personal achievement or a personal, even good and made, good intention, a personal, yes, a personal goal. It's something that we are forced in some way to share with others, share the meaning of our existence here. If we have to do something to, for example, Jim Bender suggested to develop disaster policies, to think the worst, to avoid it. Not sustainable growth, step by step, maybe it is over. Look at the possibility of a disaster, a catastrophe, a collapse. Like I told you, maybe it was for the other group, about a student of mine after the discussion, after 1 year, at the end of the semester, came back and said, it was September. I would like to do a short dissertation about Jim. Oh, this course is over. You can. Yes, but I met some friend of mine, not in the course, outside the course, attended by around 110 students. He was one of them. We did an exercise, a written exercise about this paper, and then in September, months after the course, he said, no, I discussed it, I talked with my friend, we are around a group of 10 out of the university, and then I told you this? No. Yes? Already. And then they say, what we can do, what we are able to do, what are your life skills in case of a disaster? So this is the real, a real effective way to deal with this.
So the urgency is both personal, existential, right? How do I live my life? How do I live my life in common? How do I face tragedy, mortality in my own life? And then how do I work with others who are essentially facing the same thing on the personal level? And together, we're facing something that is maybe more frightening than we're all willing to let on. So how can we come together? So the idea of community, the idea of commons, I think makes a lot of sense in that way. So how does that play out in the contemplative dimension? So you were going to read Antonio Machado.
Antonio Machado. Spanish word. Okay. Traveler, your footprints are the path and nothing else. Traveler, there is no path. A path is made by walking. A path is made by walking. And then looking back, one sees the trodden road that never will be set foot on again. Traveler, there is no path but words.
So is there a response in you, since we're working on this bodily level with our life skills, is there a response in you to that poem or to those images?
I just read a poem, and I forget what it's name. But the poem talked about looking back, oh, it was more the now.
W.S. Merwin.
And that not remembering the path or even the destination or not going to the destination, but remembering moments and images and feelings as if the destination is irrelevant and even forgetting why we were there if we're not present in the moment because we remember moments of big stuff.
Merwin is very definitely a meditator. We know this. Other responses? So, uncertainty, the unknown, possibly fear arising. And so, I think if you look down at Enzo's last paragraph there, I believe that our collective response is strongly influenced by the emotional state of the individuals. I mean, this is what we're working with in coming together to do contemplative practice. We're coming in, if the latter, if the individuals are regulated, moving towards equanimity, so to speak, we have more chances that the community effect could move us towards justice, towards peace, if you will, towards, I don't know, something that might be sustainable if such a thing is still possible. So the idea of people having enough life skills to be able to look at the situation, that's really a big part of it, isn't it? A big part of mindfulness practice is being with what's already here. We have trouble with that as humans. We don't really want to do that that often. And so when we can sort of down-regulate our nervous systems, it gives us a better capacity to be present to each other in an emergent situation. So our daily work, and particularly our work as collaborators, is to travel into the unknown. With all those fears that we won't understand each other, fears that we won't go the right way, fears that we'll make the wrong decisions, all of that going on, and we have to work with those. We can learn to live in a state of unknowing, under openness to the new, the challenging, and that which is other, right? That's actually the practice. When we're sitting there in meditation and our mind is doing all that stuff that it does, we can be present to it or not. So this is a photograph of a piece of art. It's made by an artist named Richard Long from England. And walking is his material. So this is a piece of lawn grass that he walked across 100 times. So he walked back and forth. So it's kind of a walking meditation in a way. And when you think about what was his mind state as he was doing this, what do you think was his mind state as he was doing Like, oh, damn, I have 27 more rows to go.
Maybe at times.
Maybe at times, yeah. And don't we do that? Even just getting through the day. Will this hour never end? Right. So there's that kind of thing that he's confronting. What else might he be confronting? This photograph was my response to the Machado correspondence. Yeah.
I'm thinking of this as being almost a modern problem. Like when you were speaking, I was thinking, farmers used to look up at the moon and they could see if it was gonna rain tomorrow, or they could see this. And so they were really in touch with what was going on. And they didn't have all this extra stuff like we have now. And so quite often, and I think of my own grandfather who was in touch with the land, he would walk back and forth and maybe survey the land or weed, whatever they need. And now that we are this internet, technology-driven society with 24/7, we've lost touch of this. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's one of the things I think that Richard Long's work tries to point out. If you get a chance, Google him, Richard Long. He walked all over England, actually all over the whole UK. He would just take off and go and walk. And those walks would be the piece that he did. He would document with photography and document with writing, with journals, what he was encountering. So some of it, like this, is a very repetitive thing, and others is just completely flowing walk. So having those encounters again, so more like the wake on the sea rather than actually creating a path. So how do we approach our lives, which are kind of like this? I don't know, sometimes I really feel that hamster wheel thing of get up and go to the center and do it again. I mean, it's there. And how do we make it something that has possibilities, something that can open up for us rather than something that we're just sort of gritting our teeth in? Life skill. How do we do that?
It's the community branching out. Community. It's almost like going back in some ways, right? Like you're saying, that would come back together in that cycle. Because community was 100, 200 years ago. People shared, they came together. So we're kind of trying to bring that community back.
Yeah. And so even the idea of commons and, that becoming more than 1% of the economy.
For me, I feel like walking the line every day, it's like synonymous with you wake up every day, you do the same job every day, everything is the same every day, but if he could have walked that line 100 times thinking that his last experience would be the same as the next. So if we have that same point of view, then it's like we're already going into the day judging what that day's going to be based on the previous. So I feel like you think about it that way, and then also think about everyone else is walking a line next to you, if you were to expand that out, and how do we, use each other, to get through it, communicate.
The lines have to connect.
Yeah.
You have to make a connection in order for it to not just be the hamster wheel and to have some meaning.
And then the beginner's mind, using that as a frame of reference, every day, getting up, being okay, this is a new day, this is the beginning, not just the same thing that we looked at 9 times.
Yeah, so making that turn right there at the end and then bringing beginner's mind to that walk. That's so this is a little more about the depth of the idea of life skills. Do you want to talk about that part?
No.
No? All right. So I will talk about it then because I find it intriguing. So one of the things that Enzo and I have been talking about since he's been here and sort of reared up in this is that, yes, these ideas of life skills, why are they life skills and not what all my business majors who are in my class this semester call soft skills? And then I have to argue with them because, it's like, oh, well, this meditation, this, being able to regulate yourself is a soft skill. I said, it's not a soft skill. It's about the hardest skill I can think of. And so it's a life skill because it comes up at every part of our lives. It's not just, okay, well, in the office, in school, whatever, I have to be able to be with other people and have exchanges. It's like, no. Mindfulness, my practice, my contemplative explorations are my way of dealing with those big existential questions of who am I? Why do I suffer? Why do I have to die? Why do those I love die? What's going on there? And so they're really deep, we might say religious questions, we might say spiritual questions. I would say that they're life questions, and that what we need around them is life skills. So what Enzo was pointing out here was that we're not the only beings that do that. We're not the only beings with those questions. So, the example you gave this week was elephants, and how elephants work to save each other. They will put their own life on the line for another elephant.
Actually, the example, because I don't remember exactly the source, was an elephant saving another animal species, which was a smaller one. Was
A
not an
different
elephant.
species, yeah.
So for these researchers said,
Yeah, it's not even its own species.
Lots of animals
So-
do that too. And they warn each other.
Yeah. So, there is this same process, the same development of life skills within animals, and there's even a link in this. Well, we will give you all a link to this because it was published online. There's even a link in here to plants doing the same kinds of things. So there's the idea of life skills is really the life force, and how do we work with it, which really takes us all the way back to the sort of prehistory of these things that we do that we call contemplative practice.
Which actually made me think about blueberry plants, because if you put two blueberry plants together, I think they blossom, right? And they grow and they bear fruit.
and this could be linked, from my point of view, to an interpretation of Alzheimer's disease by some gastroenterologists in individuating the origin of Alzheimer's, not in the brain, but in the belly,
In the gut.
In the gut.
Gut, we say.
in the gut,
Yeah.
in the gut. And the gut is a sort of second brain in our body, This is really interesting.
Fascinating. And it's true, the gut is the second brain.
I think we like that, in our brain, near our eyes that we see with, and near our ears that we hear with,
that's all quite lovely. But in our gut, where it's very close to where we excrete, and it's all that ugly stuff we don't like to think about,
Yeah.
smell and deal with, and that bothers us when things don't
Yeah.
go well.
But it's also true that if the gut works this way, that way, it's because we are socialized to a certain attraction or the contrary, to a certain smell or to a certain image or certain color or no,
Right.
or food. That's it. So it's not, even the body doesn't work by itself separately from a collective culture, influencing how the body receives it.
So I want to do video meditation here. So this is a piece that we're going to watch by an artist named Bill Viola. You guys know Bill Viola?
Yeah, you're in the
Yes.
cover right now. And I
Yes.
have to say, I had to walk out, it was so scary.
Yeah.
I should have stayed with it, but it was,
That's the veil. That's it.
that might be what it's
Yeah.
called, is the video.
The people walk through the water and
You go into.
come
the
out at
dark
you,
room,
yes,
and it's
yes.
very powerful.
And so these are displayed museum style, you know, the projector's better for this. Because he films things at about 1,000 frames per second and then plays them back at the regular rate, which is 24 FPS, right? So it's really, really slowed down. And so it's not necessarily easy to maintain our attention on it. And that's why I'm saying this is a meditation practice that I'm offering here. It's 10 minutes, and if you can stay with it and keep checking in to what you see and what's going on for you, you may find something interesting. Are you all ready?
Yeah.
No? Not quite yet. It's called the raft.
So when I first saw it, candidly, I said to myself, oh, wouldn't it be great just to live in moments that way, especially because no matter how much mindfulness that I've done, I still can't, manage to really live in moments. And I said, oh, wouldn't it be sweet just to be able to live in moments that are longer, right, and just really live in them. And then when that devastation happened, I said not so much, but it also made me think of the article that we read a few classes back at Burning Children. And it gets back to what you were talking about earlier, this thing called life skills, right? And, how do we garner such life skills and such resilience to be able to manage to kind of like weather those type of catastrophes, tragedies. So it's really kind of sad.
But in what sense is it sad?
Well,
It's sad.
well, it saddened me because, like I said, when I initially watched it, I was kind of like happy that with the potential, the possibility to be able to sit and linger in moments. And then that was taken away from it. What happened?
Not a lot of lingering.
No, and candidly, me personally, I don't know if I would necessarily have. I'm getting balled up now talking about it. The self-regulation to weather that.
I get it, no, I understand, I struggled with it too, exactly, it was very, I don't watch the nightly news, I don't watch anything. So for me personally, just because of my own stuff, I don't expose myself to anything that could trigger, a negative response, so, I thought 9/11 immediately, I don't know what it was, but for me, I went right to 9/11, because I think I was connected to I was in northern New Jersey at the time, so, yeah. So, you think it was like a beautiful day, everything was normal, and then bam, and so that happened. So I think for me, that's where I went immediately. I don't know why, but that's what I took from that. So
It was interesting because I worked in school and my whole life was at the school. I thought immediately as soon as the shootings. But what I was struck by, two things that struck me were, how often do we all stand around at a bus stop or whatever story you might have engaged in, just doing what we're doing, sneezing, whatever. And we're all disconnected because we're in our little world of, I gotta do, I gotta go, and then tragedy or something unexpected. And only then do we notice each other, and each other, and to reach out to each other. And as I was watching it, I was aware of my mind telling me, trying to figure out the story, and the movie, or the song, or the, what are they doing? What's going, and my brain had lots of stories. And I was just watching that. And then when the water came, I was aware, and my body hasn't calmed down just yet. I still have this rush. My heart started racing. I was worried about the woman on the floor. Oh, she was the first one down. Trampling. And my heart was racing. My mouth was dry. I was worried about different ones in the group. And that's what struck me the most, was the difference between before and after, the connection between the people, and then my own response to the visual of people possibly being hurt, and my physical response.
My hands were still shaking inside.
Oh, that's just right.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
because unfortunately, that's where we are.
Yeah.
That's the reality of our lives.
Yeah.
Which I guess, that's what
That's what Bill is after.
Right.
Yeah.
My hands are still kind of shaking from the adrenaline and the heart racing. It's, oh my God. Yeah.
And how did you see in their responses? It sounds like you
Oh, yes.
saw in their responses something really
Oh, absolutely.
optimistic almost.
Yes, well, you know, let's say, so the lady on the ground, and they barely knew they were standing that close to each other. It appeared as if they barely, you know, blind spot, I don't see you standing right there because I'm in the elevator, staying in my own space here. Okay. And it made me crazy how people who kept walking through from this side kept going between that guy in the back and the lady in the front, and they just kept walking right through people. Nobody said, excuse me, pardon me. I thought the guy in the back was going to touch somebody's shoulder, be like, oh, yeah, okay, man, go ahead. And they were just completely separate. And then afterward, they were literally reaching out. You all right? You know, can I help you up? And the difference in their relationship immediately. So that's what I was struck by.
I think in addition to the eye contact and the touch and I was struck by the number of people who seemed to be guarding their stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody that had a bag sort of had their hand on it or was.
Oh, you mean before the
Before the
water?
Before the water. And at the end, I don't know if people even still were holding anything, but they were way more concerned about people around them touching them versus their stuff.
Yeah.
I resonated with both of what you guys were saying, and that's exactly what was going on in my mind, and I was especially struck by it. I took from like that woman was protecting her first, and she felt someone look behind her,
Yeah.
and she was like all about herself and self-centered, and it's interesting how it was just like a little tidbit of like someone pushing us through it, but that a disaster brings us together, and how we can change that.
Where that can be more of our daily existence instead of the isolation.
I wonder if we saw that in real time as opposed.
It's about 10 seconds
Right.
versus 10 minutes.
And what parts of our brain would be triggered in real time versus in that sequence? Because for me, it was like elements of the human condition and suffering, and it was contemplative. Whereas if it was in real time, it would be almost pure reaction, pure, almost even more of an emotional reaction.
Yeah, it was. I mean, these were hired actors. You just said, okay, here, stand around for a while on this raft. Tilting camera maybe made it seem like a raft. Yeah, they didn't know what was coming.
They didn't know that.
So that was the response. That was the real time response that you were watching only. He didn't direct them. They did what they did.
Yeah, I was gonna say that the emotional response, I feel like was what got me, because before they weren't, they were all in their own business, but then afterwards, like the woman in front, they were picking her up, they were putting her arm around her shoulder and having some, and they're strangers that just that comes together. Because in the end, we're all doing the same things.
It's interesting because I saw when the water first started coming out, they all kind of like went together. Like to me, the image was like they were like they leaned in closer to each other, and then they couldn't like the water kept going. They started like falling apart, and then I found myself just watching, waiting, like, okay, like see what happens. I was waiting for them to be optimistic. I don't know why. I was waiting.
Go ahead.
It's striking me as, because in the middle school I work in, lots of things have changed. Supervisors and policy and all of this thing, including a one-on-one initiative, that's supposed to be a good thing, Chromebooks. Every child has his own Chromebook. Because we all that, we can afford that. On a human level, working in emotional support and being a therapist for 30 years, all that continually strikes me is that there are more and more every school year. There are more students who don't have these life skills because they literally are glued. I have 4 students who, if you tell them it's time to close their Chromebook, become combative, that they're that cut off. And every day, the teacher I work with, and I was like, oh my God, I wait for the future. Because every year when they come in as a group, 7th grade, 6th grade class, every class that comes into 6th grade has less and less of these life skills. And what happens in a classroom full of students where they're putting in everybody, because inclusion is all we should cut off their humanness by giving them all a Chromebook, and then we should put them all in a room together where they can't regulate themselves, because that's perfect petri dish for good learning.
Yeah.
And that's all I got. I'm just like overwhelmed. All at the end of every day, I feel like a dish rag, because not only am I trying to help these individual students, but I'm just horrified for the future and our existence. Exactly what you're saying, like they just don't.
And I just want to mention to you, Kathy, that you are taking the initiative to bring life skills to the students. Right? That's why you're here.
That is why I'm here, and I can't get enough of them in one spot. I feel like there should be, 20 of me? So yay, there's 20 of us.
So, I teach some life skills because I teach family and consumer science.
Oh,
So I
yes.
teach them hands
Those are good.
They
literal
teach them
skills.
cooking.
Yeah.
And you do see a big difference in what they can, like, years ago when we first started, what they can and cannot do. But my students used to not like hand sewing. Now they're like so into it.
Yeah.
The Chromebook kids, they're so into it because it's so fun and they get to create. And so there is hope. And with the cooking, like they're into it.
It seems that the doors in to the system come through health and gym, health and phys ed, or FCS, because those are the subjects closest to like being human.
Yeah.
Being in your body, or learning how to nurture yourself. And that's what I'm
Also
finding.
the district you're in, so like, I can give an example. I have a
Yeah,
child-
that would be-
Yeah, so I live in
yeah.
Western Story School District, not a great district, but I have a child based out in the CDC. So it's a socially economically disadvantaged community. And a lot of the kids who are there have significant trauma history,
Right.
significant deprivation. So it's like to just even teach life skills to those kids, they're just trying to survive. I mean,
Oh,
they're
I
just
know,
trying
yeah,
to
I
get
have a
through
few
their
of those,
day
too.
to be right, so you know. So it's like, and then those poor teachers are really struggling just to keep chaos from erupting.
Chaos,
Literally. No,
that's-
I hate to use that word.
Without
but-
self-regulation, that's what you have.
yeah, so
Chaos.
it's like, it
Feels
feels like
like.
that, and it's, and, you know, and in courses that I'm in, you know, I have teachers in my classes that are like dealing in Philly, I mean, some of the stuff they're dealing with is just incredible as teachers. You know, so my heart goes out to you, and then let alone to those teachers who are just like, hey, let's just get through the day without something seriously
Right.
bad
Yes,
happening.
yes.
You know, and so it's hard.
We made it through another day, every day. We're talking, walking down halls, saying that to each other.
And so much pressure is put on a teacher
to fix the problem.
Well, but, and very little of it has anything to do with life skills. Most of it has to do with
Chromebook.
more the Chromebook and more the tests and more the outside of.
You can't do the other things without the life skills, is kind of the point.
Exactly, which is why in emotional support, the teacher and I that I work with, we're like, we've been working together for 12 years. And we keep trying to tell everybody, I don't give a shit about their grades. Stop asking me about their tests. The child had an Uber to school today, okay? He had to walk. I'm just glad he's here.
So I assume
You can't do anything without being able to focus on
Right,
it.
so the Waldorf movement? I don't know if
Yes,
you
yeah,
guys-
Enzo and I were talking about that last night with my wife, who was a primary school teacher.
Two of my kids are Waldorf educated, so that they don't even introduce academics up until like 9 years old. I mean, a lot of
Yeah.
it is just that life skill that you're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
And I see the difference, you know, I see what that can do.
I was gonna say that, so that I couldn't afford it. So they went to PD, and I'm glad they graduated and they're in these wonderful other colleges where.
So, back to
Sorry.
Sorry.
back to the video. Anything else come out of that for you? Just the process you went through in watching. And I know there was a lot of mental stuff, but how was it, on that physiological life skills basis?
I have to take lots of deep breaths. Just to kind of try and calm my racing heart. Gives me a lot.
Not to look away, like I thought of the comment you made, not to look away when it was either disconcerting or I forgot room, or not to think about time and how if our life slowed down, it would be easy to attune to each moment. But when things go very quickly, or not the way we want, or not the way we expected, to still come back and be in the moment and let the moment dictate instead of my brain. And like I wanted to focus on the lady that never seemed to change. And it was almost an exercise in shutting my brain off and just immerse into it. And that dichotomy between when the mind should function and our brain should hold in that way for the moment.
I was thinking about, when I saw this, the trauma, I thought of, because of the water, I thought of like the Bahamas and stuff happened there. And then I thought about Puerto Rico, how that happened 2 years ago, and how people just forget, like, with time, as life goes on all the time. Even like in our school, we had a student who was in 9th grade this year, and she said, I want to have like a silent moment on September 11th, which is something that like we haven't done, and it's crazy how like, yeah, like this is our country, and like it's, they learn about it in history classes, yeah. And it's just like, like life always goes on, and you forget, and then it's those, some people are, like the people that were in it are still don't do that.
So how about, this is the last question for you. How about the way it ended?
I feel like they were just still picking up the pieces of it. And I think the way it ended, like, abruptly like that is, like, whenever anyone goes through a trauma or a tragedy, like, usually people are there in the beginning to help them, but then as time goes on, the help kind of, never really, like,
gestalt of some type. And do we? I just think that's another question Bill is asking us there. You know, were you expecting me to wrap this up? Were you expecting denouement and conclusion? Nah, not gonna go there.
I just wanted to add, I was thinking, like what Jenny was saying, how we all, things kind of settle back down, but they're never totally settled back down. And I think we all, and I think through my own life and experience that I've had, and as I've gotten older, that yes, we kind of go back to the normal, but you still have those lessons learned. So more and more, every time when I am in that elevator, I'll strike up a conversation with a human being, a perfect stranger, because they're a valued human being and are worth validating and respecting, and even if it's just have a great night, or I see you ordered up pizza, whatever it is. So there's that ripple effect. Maybe it's not direct with that exact same group of people, but you've learned something from it, and hopefully you have become more compassionate and empathetic for everybody else you encounter throughout life. I mean, that ripple effect is huge. Some people might squash it, but I see it as if we really learn from these experiences, we become more human.
You said group tragedies you talked about is why they had them, correct?
Yeah.
It wasn't all, whatever.
We're gonna sit here, we're gonna see this, we're gonna recall, this is our history, right? Now, it might be mythological history, but it's our history, and these things happen. And we can see why, even though the characters can't. I've been thinking a lot about that last week. The people who are on the stage don't really know what's going on. They don't know the parts of the story that are causing. Oedipus doesn't see his own pride, right? Overweening pride. It only becomes evident to those who are watching. Bring it on in.
Looking at that, how about the connection in this group with that you have in class? Do you imagine that we would have reacted the same way or differently? I myself, I think we reacted differently. I'm not identified with that. But I understand, I feel that this could be a standard way to react. Very common depending by the character of each of them, or maybe the social class, maybe the woman with the yeah. But it is not what I expect by people trained in life skills. No? What I mean, it's a question.
How would we respond?
Same or different?
I mean, I would like to think that, as Kathy would say, it would be more of the coming together than of the fragmenting ourselves, and more of trying to care for each other. I think that is even the elephant saving the pig, or whatever it was. I mean, there is that movement that people who have tried to cultivate those life skills have, from confronting maybe other tragedies, from the suffering of their own life, that turns us towards others at those times.
So when I was living in New York, there was actually an incident while I was on the train, and there was an active shooter on the train. And it was very interesting. Everyone did. I mean, they protected each other. People actually came together. I remember getting off at the the next two stops, we were allowed to exit the train. And I made a friendship with one of the women on the train because everyone was so protective of one another. Yeah, so I believe that people do come together in those times of adversity. Yes,
It is
yes.
so breakfast club. I'm sorry.
It is the emotional response and be more action oriented. But it sounds paradoxical in talking about that.
No, I think you're right. It's that capacity to be in the moment, and this is the moment of that, and what needs to happen. I mean, then the life skills meet the way we're socialized, right? And we are still socialized in many ways to turn towards each other and help each other. I'm not an optimist. I have hope without optimism.
Because the regular trip on the train when I was growing up in New York, people were aloof, right? They were into their books, they were holding on to their handbags.
Yeah, there's a very famous study that was done by Bryn Mawr College on the mainline train. And so they met people, you know the study, they met people at the stations in the suburbs, and they, said, would you let me interview you? And they were like, yeah, they were all loquacious and talking. And then they met the same people when they got off in 30th Street or the center station there, and they wouldn't talk to them. So they had completely, over that little traveling and where they were going, they completely lost that openness.
A similar thing like that happened to me in Long Island at a mall. We thought it was an active shooter, but it was not. Because the people running out of the mall trampled over so many people because there was panic.
Fear, yeah.
So I was at the Chipotle in the mall, and I remember food everywhere because everyone just like left, and there a baby in a stroller was a parent was trying to take out a baby, and people were on top of it. It was crazy. And it wasn't an active shooter, but it was someone had a gun, but it wasn't. They were trying to steal something. It's just scary.
So try one more thing. So, I mean, in this one, we were using our life skills for ourselves to bring ourselves to this piece over and over again as we had to, like meditation. I want to see if we can do that as a group rather than as individuals. How can a group come back again and again to the same mind? Put that question out there and then we pass these around. Anyone to pass along? I will, while exploring what we've noticed. So this is called Snowbanks North of the House. It's by Robert Bly. Those great sweeps of snow that stop suddenly 6 feet from the house. Thoughts that go so far. The boy gets out of high school and reads no more books. The son stops calling home. The mother puts down her rolling pin and makes no more bread. And the wife looks at her husband one night at a party and loves him no more. The energy leaves the wine and the minister falls, leaving the church. It will not come closer. The one inside moves back and the hands touch nothing and are safe. And the father grieves for his son and will not leave the room where the coffin stands. He turns away from his wife, and she sleeps alone. And the sea lifts and falls all night. The moon goes on through the unattached heavens alone. And the toe of the shoe pivots in the dust. The man in the black coat turns and goes back down the hill. No one knows why he came or why he turned away and did not climb the hill. And so we'll just, you have to read poetry a number of times maybe before you really start to get anything. But did anything strike you in this first reading?
Well, I thought about the analogy of the 6 feet from the house and then the grieving father. And when we think about people being buried, we often think about them as being buried 6 feet under.
6 feet under, yeah. Okay, so that, you caught that resonance
Yeah.
there. Interesting.
I started my day today at a funeral for a college friend. My husband and I introduced these two friends of ours, and their 29-year-old son died. So that's where I was this morning, and I'm just, the father grieves, and that's just, he's the only son.
Yeah. So that struck you right there, that personal feeling.
Need a hug?
Sure.
Yep. So sorry.
And so our job as community is to work with what comes up from the poem and also to work on the poem. And so anything else that you saw that touched you, that moved you, all of those things that we say that just happen. They're subcortical. They're not necessarily out of thinking.
I think there's a lot of elements of pleasant things and beautiful things interlaid within the poem, even though the overall tone is bleak and sad and somewhat depressing. You still have the sea and the moon and the snow. And
That all goes on.
The sea rises and falls all night, and the things that don't quite happen are maybe the boy gets out of high school and reads no more books, where reading books would be the pleasant thing. The mother puts down her rolling pin and bakes and makes no more bread. And so the idea of baking bread has some resonance to it, and he's taking it away. I mean, the poet is taking it away from us in some sense. Do you see that?
The other thing I thought about was whether or not the child who passed away was suffering from an illness. only because it speaks to the wife and the husband kind of like not in the same place. And sometimes in family units, when there's a child who is suffering or who's dying, it doesn't necessarily bring the parents together. It kind of pulls them apart. So I thought about that also.
I think along the same lines, I felt like, even though it was like a short poem, like when it talks about snow in the beginning and then the shoe dripping in the dust, like made me think of like, then maybe a summer, like there's no, like it felt like a long passage of time and maybe passed because of the
Yeah.
juxtaposition of those
Yeah,
two
when
things.
are these things happening? Yeah.
And they're within the context of another rhythm, the natural rhythm of the world. And you, like it starts with that and it keeps getting back to the natural rhythm. And the human rhythm, I don't want to say it seems artificial to that or jarring, and that it will never come closer. So you have that sweeping rhythm.
So what is it? It will not come close. And that's a really interesting sort of closing to that first stanza. It will not come closer. The one inside moves back, and the hands touch nothing and are safe.
The chances that we take when we step outside ourselves, as we move through life and opportunities open up, that we can do those things or try those things now. Maybe other responsibilities that we see at work, children have grown or whatever. But then you realize maybe there's a place where I can't go any further. Maybe I won't be able to get beyond this.
Yeah.
Maybe my vision is going a little bit for driving at night or whatever it is, or there'll be a big bill that I can't manage. And you don't, how far can you go? And then that,
Yeah. That kind of feeling is endless, particularly in the first stanza. Thoughts that go so far.
Where it says like no one knows why he came or left, like I feel like that just speaks to like a lack of communication in general. Like I feel it feels sad to me. Like nobody knows. Like, and I think that speaks a lot to like people going through stuff that no one knows. People don't talk about.
Yeah. So that no one knows being kind of a sense of all of us not knowing.
And kind of goes off of that, the one inside moves back and hands touch nothing and I'm safe. Like, it's just safer just to be to myself and not explore to comfort somebody else to get past that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as I was reading it the first time, and I try to keep reading it the first time, the one inside moves back and the hands touch nothing. I'm thinking it's going along the same lines as the other ones. And then it becomes, and are safe. And that seems so jarring, you know? It's like all these other things are so like, ooh, you know, this is only going so far. The boy, you know, the son won't call home anymore. You know, all of these like endings here we're safe.
It's sort of the opposite of what we just experienced with the video. The tragedy did not bring them closer together.
Yeah.
The tragedy separated them, they stayed to themselves.
I think actually it's more about fear of what people have, so we actually have that all in common. You have something, you're afraid to lose it, you're afraid you won't get it, you're afraid like you like snow and you want it, but it's going to stay back. You have your identities as a mother, you're going to lose that. You love your identities in your relationship, you're going to lose that, you're going to lose love, your son. So it's about loss. It's about fear of loss. That whatever you have is gone. And like your direction is going to change. It's fear.
Yeah.
And we all have that. think it's actually something that's in common with.
So this comes from a collection of poems that was titled The Man in the Black Coat. So he's pretty important. I'm going to read that part. Yeah. The sea lifts and falls all night. The moon goes on through the unattached heavens alone. And the toe of the shoe pivots in the dust. The man in the black coat turns and goes back down the hill. No one knows why he came or why he turned away and did not climb. Who's the man in the black? That's the question that. So death seems like a kind of an obvious answer.
Yeah.
I wonder. So it's like the snow stops suddenly 6 feet from.
Maybe he was stuck. It stopped 6 feet from the house.
Stopped 6 feet from the house. So if when we page, we look at couple paths. So the father turning away from us. But
So if you believe in tarot card readings, the death card actually means a new beginning,
Right.
right? So it is all about interpretation.
Any other thoughts about this before we wrap up? So, I mean, what I was trying to point out here, and I don't know if we noticed it, is that we kept returning to this one thing that we shared. And we also found those other things that we shared by doing this. And that this is a life skill, this capacity to focus the community on one. And so we share that life skill, we share that. I don't think we rehearse it very often.
And not to upset you, Kathy, but it does remind me of funerals, right? Every time people get together at a funeral, they say, oh, why do we get together just
Right,
like you?
right. Yeah,
Literally,
we have,
words
Right.
spoken
we
over.
have to get
Yeah.
there. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Could be great in a family situation, your family. From time to time, it's really home. In my family, we never do it. But I mean, it's a way of, it's a tool of communication, and in an indirect way, share emotions, family members.
So I think that if you look back in history, just recent history, just look a couple hundred years back, people sat in the sitting room and somebody read aloud. And then obviously you would talk about the book, right? This is what people do. I don't know, in my own youth, which was callow, I would say, there was one television set in the house. And you would turn something on and everyone would watch it. And you had the opportunity to talk about it. We're so individualized now that we don't have that many things that bring us together except maybe tragedy. Except maybe those tragic moments. So how can we cultivate more of those times when we're together as community? I mean, we're launched on this thing, those of us who are studying mindfulness, we're launched on this thing that looks very individualistic. But the skill underneath is to keep bringing your mind back to the anchor, to the one thing. This was our one thing. So last question, discussion, whatever. How was it?
I was just gonna say, I've been reading about communal living, all right, you're gonna think I'm really strange, but there's a movement of communal living.
Oh, sure,
And
there
there's
is.
communities like, and
Yeah.
I found one in New Hampshire, and I was looking at it, and.
I've researched it too.
Yeah, and when you're talking about it, it's kind of bringing like-minded people together, and it builds a community, and so, you know, you could have like sharing childcare, or when people are aging, or whatever.
They're very expensive communities.
They were expensive, yeah.
Well,
Because you
this
have to own the house.
This is America.
Right,
They're gonna be
exactly.
expensive.
But, you know, that's what all this kind of comes back to, is, you know, that some people are beginning to think about this. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know about your neighborhoods, but nobody shares sugar anymore. I can't go borrow
Oh, no.
milk from
Or
my
milk,
neighbor,
right.
or, you know, all those other things that we used to do.
I bet you'd want to test it.
I mean, yeah.
So, but how was this experience on that basic
What were you gonna say? You share sugar?
life skills?
Yeah, not my
Well,
neighborhood, no.
On that basic, sitting here in this room right now, level, how was it to be attentive to the one thing, the thing that was in the middle, the poem? What did you notice about it?
I really like it because, like, we all sort of start out at a place where we're equal. Like, no one is a professional at this poem, so it gives everybody the same place to start.
Yeah?
And I belong to a narrative medicine group at work, so we do this once a month.
Mhm.
Read something or we'll look at something, so thank you. I now have a lot of stuff.
Okay.
But it's nice because it's a group of, you know, it's physicians, it's social workers, it's researchers, it's housekeeping staff that all come together and we read things that no one has read before, and then we write things and we share, and it's a way to process the really hard stuff that we all do
Yeah.
at work,
Yeah.
but in a way that makes it really.
That's neat, I think, just to find a common ground to start at. That's really.
Any other reflections? So this comes out of the shared reading tradition, and so you end a shared reading by reading the poem one last time. So I'll read the poem. Please eat cookies and bagels and stuff, and hang out if you want. Snowbanks north of the house. Those great sweeps of snow that stops suddenly 6 feet from the house. Thoughts that go so far. The boy gets out of high school and reads no more books. The son stops calling home. The mother puts down her rolling pin and makes no more bread. And the wife looks at her husband one night at a party and loves him no more. The energy leaves the wine, and the minister falls, leaving the church. It will not come closer. The one inside moves back, and the hands touch nothing and are safe. And the father grieves for his son and will not leave the room where the coffin stands. He turns away from his wife, and she sleeps alone. And the sea lifts and falls all night. The moon goes on through the unattached heavens alone. And the toe of the shoe pivots in the dust. The man in the black coat turns and goes back down the hill. No one knows why he came or why he turned away and did not climb the hill. Yes.
It will not come closer. The one inside moves back, and the hands touch nothing and are safe.
that's in the middle. So my interpretation is that the tragedy did not occur. It came very close. But in the end, death turned away. That's my
Well,
interpretation.
that's,
Like maybe the
That-
man is death.
that's,
Like
a-
the man
that's,
on the hill.
if the man in the black coat is death, then that would be an interpretation.
It got really close.
Mm. Yeah.
I'm an optimist.
And there's that sense in which we all have this, thoughts that go so far, things that don't quite come to fruition, don't work out, things that get undercut by the world or that we sabotage ourselves. All of it. The poem for me has a piling up effect, all of these things. You know, we didn't really even talk about all of them, like the energy leaves the wine and the minister falls, leaving the church. How do you unpack that?
It reminds me of the Beatles song, it reminds me of like Eleanor Rigby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Eleanor Rigby has the same kind of structure.
Yeah.
And minor, total, tone.
Talking about community though, just how we marvel at the joy when we do get to come together, whether it's something positive or something tragic, and then we say, wow, but, it was so good that we could all be there for one another. I'm thinking of the snow. The snow made me think about the big snowfalls that we get once in a while, and I live in a little bit of suburbia, and everybody comes out to shovel. And they're the people, of course, that you never see.
Yes.
a good
Right.
bit of the
Especially in
year.
the winter.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's better than summer. In summer, everybody heads out somewhere, but in winter, we're all bound by this snow. And in another way, it's like you can have those conversations that people used to have when you would sit on the stoop together and tell your stories and share ideas and take that kind of time and that place where we come together to share story, whether it's poetry, a written story, or our own story, and the joy that has never left any of us, if any of us has ever been read to by a parent or a loved one. And that joy that I get to experience, which I'm so lucky, with children is so clear. The TV goes off, video games go off, because even at age 5, they've already got their little iPads, and they want to, as soon as the parent attention or the grandmother attention goes away, out comes the little iPad or the TV, the cartoons that are seemingly mindless. But as soon as you say, how about a book? Everything gets shut off, and I am continually amazed at how gorgeous a moment it is when they both cuddle under your arm, fight for your lap, and hang on every word of that story. And we do too. I do. I think you probably all do too. That story, when you get in the elevator with somebody and you do start talking, because, boy, you got to jam in those stories somewhere because you're so busy. The snow comes, oh, thank God. I mean, the other day I even shouted to the neighbor. He came out and it was just that little bit of snow. And I said, I can't wait. Soon we'll be shoveling together. And, we can catch up. So.
Thank you all so much for coming. That's what we got. We will we will share with you this article that we did together. And I hope you will continue to consider life skills as being an actual thing. And like I say, please eat. They could